Ever wonder about the hidden ingredients in, say, the products you use every single day? Things like the feel of your favorite lotion, or even how pesticides protect our crops. There's a whole world of chemistry sort of working behind the scenes.
Absolutely. And today we're pulling back the curtain on a group of chemicals that are, well, surprisingly crucial players in this hidden world, oleate esters.
That's right. We've taken a deep dive into a pretty detailed market research report on the Global Oleate Esters Market. And our mission for this deep dive is basically to cut through all the data, pull out the really important insights, and give you a clear, engaging picture of this essential part of the chemical industry.
And it's a significant market, definitely,
Yeah.
and growing. The report tells us the global market was valued at roughly 1.8 billion US dollars back in 2025.
Wow. Okay. And the projection shows some strong upward momentum, right? It's expected to climb to over $2.6 billion by 2033.
That's right. That reflects a steady compound annual growth rate, or CAGR, of 4.90%. That's from 2025 right through to 2033. So pretty consistent growth over nearly a decade.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit. Before we get, deeper into the market numbers, what exactly are oleate esters at their core?
So you can think of them as sort of specialized fats. They're chemicals made by taking an alcohol and combining it with oleic acid. And oleic acid is, well, it's a common fatty acid you find in everyday natural oils, like olive oil or oils from palm, soybeans, sunflower, things like that.
Ah, so they often start their life story rooted in nature from plants then.
Precisely. Yeah. And this natural origin often gives them properties that are really, really desirable in, well, quite a few applications.
Which brings us neatly to where they're used. The report looks at several industries, but one kind of stands out as the biggest consumer.
That would be the cosmetics sector. Yeah, it holds the largest piece of the pie for oleate esters.
And why are they so popular there? Like, what job do they actually do in our creams and makeup?
They're real workhorses for improving the feel and function. They're excellent skin conditioning agents, moisturizers, and really importantly, emulsifiers. Think about trying to mix oil and water, they just separate, right? Well, oleate esters help bind those different types of ingredients together smoothly. They create stable lotions and creams. They also make products feel smoother, improve textures, and even help with things like, detangling hair in shampoos and conditioners.
Right, so that feeling of a really smooth serum or maybe a stable lotion that you love, there's a good chance these compounds are contributing, well, pretty significantly to that experience.
Exactly. They're fundamental to the performance and the feel of so many products you likely use without even thinking about it.
Okay, now, while cosmetics is the largest slice, the report highlights a potentially surprising sector that's actually growing the fastest.
Yes, that's right. That's the agrochemical segment.
Agrochemical.
Right.
Like pesticides and herbicides used on farms.
Yeah.
How do these compounds, the ones often found in cosmetics, end up there? Are they like moisturizing the crops?
Not quite. In agrochemicals, they play a different but equally critical role. They act as emulsifiers, solvents, and dispersants for the active ingredients. Imagine you're spraying a pesticide on a field. You need the active compound to dissolve properly, spread evenly across the plant leaves, and importantly, stick there, even if it rains, for instance. Oleate esters help make that happen. They significantly improve the efficacy of crop protection.
So they basically help the main ingredient do its job better, making farming more efficient. That feels incredibly important, especially for global food production.
It really is, and there's also a growing interest in using them as bio-based adjuvants, which fits nicely with the broader push towards more sustainable farming methods.
Interesting. The report also touches on their use in other areas. I think it mentioned lubricants, plasticizers, absorbents, and we hinted at pharmaceuticals earlier too.
Yes, that's right. Their role in pharmaceuticals is also seeing some significant growth, particularly in drug delivery systems.
How do they help deliver drugs? What's the mechanism there?
They're used as excipients, those inactive substances that help carry and formulate the active drug itself. Oleate esters can significantly improve the solubility and the absorption, what we call bioavailability of certain medications. This helps the drug get where it needs to go in the body more effectively. Whether it's an oral pill or, say, a topical cream, they also help stabilize formulations and keep ingredients dispersed evenly.
So they can actually help make medicines more effective or just easier for our bodies to use. That's a really impactful application, isn't it?
Absolutely. It just shows their diverse utility, really, moving from beauty products all the way to essential medicines and agriculture.
Okay, let's look closer at the different forms these compounds take. The report mentioned a few main types, I believe.
Yes, the key ones discussed are methyl oleate, ethyl oleate, butyl oleate, and also trimethylpropane triolate, or TMPTO.
Right. And focusing on the main ones, methyl and ethyl oleate seem pretty prominent. Which of those tends to dominate the market?
The report points to methyl oleate as the one that holds the largest market share, and it's expected to continue dominating.
Any particular reasons why methyl oleate is the leader? What makes it stand out?
Well, its versatility is probably its main strength. It's a fantastic emulsifier, surfactant, and solvent, which makes it valuable across a really wide spectrum. So not just pharma and cosmetics, but also things like food applications, where it might act as a flavor carrier, maybe in emulsions, and even as a precursor for biodiesel. Plus, because it's derived from natural oils, its eco-friendly and biodegradable profile fits perfectly with that growing demand for sustainable ingredients we're seeing everywhere.
Okay, so a real multi-tool chemical that also happens to align well with green trends. Makes sense. What about the fastest growing type then?
That title goes to ethyl oleate. It's experiencing particularly rapid growth, according to the report.
And what's driving that speed? What's behind ethyl oleate's rise?
A big factor is its specific advantage in pharmaceuticals. It seems to be excellent at improving the solubility and bioavailability of certain drugs, which makes it highly sought after in that space. But, like methyl oleate, it's also used in cosmetics as a skin conditioner or emollient. And it finds use in biodiesel components, too. And again, that overall market push for natural ingredients definitely benefits ethyl oleate's expansion as well.
It really sounds like both the market leader and the fastest growing type are capitalizing heavily on this demand for natural ingredients, alongside their critical roles in pharma and cosmetics.
That connection is definitely a key thread. It runs right through the market dynamics described in the report.
Speaking of dynamics, let's talk about the main forces shaping this market. What's pushing it forward, or maybe holding it back?
Okay, let's start with the drivers, the things pushing it forward. We've actually touched on several already. The significant demand from personal care and cosmetics, right? Which is fueled by consumers looking for natural, plant-based, sustainable options. Oleesters tick those boxes. They're emulsifiers, conditioners, moisturizers, and they're also biodegradable.
Right. And their increasing importance in the pharmaceutical industry, making drugs more effective through better solubility and delivery. We covered that.
Exactly. And that's driven by the focus on more efficient, patient-friendly drug methods, and also the shift towards using natural excipients. Then there's the rising demand for agrochemicals, which is linked to the need to feed a growing global population and changing diets. Oleate esters improve pesticide effectiveness and, as we said, are increasingly desired as bio-based adjuvants for sustainable farming.
Plus, their general utility in various industrial processes. It seems like that overarching trend towards natural and sustainable ingredients is a major, major tailwind here.
It absolutely is, yeah. Now, for the main challenge, the sort of speed bump in the road for this market,
What's the biggest restraint holding things back?
it really comes down to the price volatility of their raw materials, since they primarily come from natural oils, palm, soybean, sunflower. Their prices are highly susceptible to external factors.
What kind of factors are we talking about?
Oh, things like changes in agricultural policies, disruptions in global supply chains. We've seen plenty of that recently. Geopolitical instability that affects trade routes. And increasingly, climate change impacting crop yields through, severe weather events, droughts, floods.
So a drought in a major soybean-producing region could potentially directly impact the cost of your moisturizer down the line.
Potentially, yes, it could ripple through. And there's also competition for these very same oils from the biofuel industry, which puts additional pressure on supply and price. This unpredictability in raw material costs makes it really difficult for manufacturers, especially smaller ones, to plan effectively and maintain stable profit margins. And that can constrain overall market growth.
That makes perfect sense. Unpredictable costs are tough for any business, really.
Mm.
Okay, beyond the main drivers and restraints, are there other notable trends the report highlights?
Well, the growing demand for sustainable and bio-based products is listed as a major trend, which really just reinforces that key driver we discussed. Oleate esters from renewable oils align perfectly with this consumer desire for clean label ingredients, products with simple, understandable, natural origins. People want to know what's in their stuff.
Yeah, definitely. And the report also calls out their growing use in the agrochemical sector as a significant trend, which I guess makes sense given it's the fastest growing application area.
Yes, exactly. And there's also a trend mentioned around developing novel production processes for oleate esters, finding new ways to make them, perhaps more efficiently or sustainably, and expanding their use specifically within pharmaceutical formulations. So innovation continues to play a role.
Okay, let's zoom out a bit then and look at the global landscape. We know the overall market size and the CAGR, but where in the world is the main action happening?
Right now, North America is the dominant region. The report stated it held over 40% of the global market share back in 2025. That was valued at around $660 million, with a projected CTR of about 3.7%.
And why is North America leading the pack?
Well, it has a very well-established industrial base, access to advanced technology, and there's a strong growing demand for bio-based chemicals across key sectors like lubricants, personal care, cosmetics. Within North America, the U.S. is obviously a massive market just due to its broad manufacturing base and consumption levels, while Canada is noted as particularly significant for its pharmaceutical industry, where oleate esters play that crucial excipient role we talked about.
Got it. So a large mature market with strong industrial and consumer demand. But where's the most, let's say, explosive growth happening? Which region is growing fastest?
That would be Asia Pacific, or APAC. While its market share in 2025 was smaller, around 23%, roughly $428 million, its projected CGR is higher, at 4.6%.
Okay, 4.6%. What's fueling that rapid growth in APAC?
It's really being driven by a combination of factors. Rising disposable incomes in many countries, rapid urbanization, and increasing industrialization across many emerging economies in the region. China is the largest single market within APAC, showing very strong growth, driven by its immense manufacturing output and huge domestic consumption. But India actually stands out with the highest CAGR in the entire APAC region. That's propelled by a surge in consumer awareness and demand, particularly in the skincare and beauty sectors there. And you also have countries like South Korea and Japan, which are important players focusing on more advanced high-tech formulations.
Right, so APAC's growth is really tied to its massive developing consumer class and expanding industrial capacity. Makes sense. How do the other regions stack up in the report?
Europe is another major market. It holds over 30% share, worth about $518 million in 2025, with a pretty solid CAGR of 4.0%. The UK specifically shows a strong KGR within Europe, apparently driven by its strong consumer demand for natural and eco-friendly products.
Okay, and South America, how does it feature?
South America has around 5% share, maybe a bit more, about $68 million in 2025 value, with a slightly higher CGR projected at 5.2%. Argentina, in particular, is highlighted for a high CGR, also linked strongly to those natural and eco-friendly trends.
And the Middle East.
Smaller share, about 2%, valued at around $71 million, but showing a promising 5.4% CEGR. Turkey seems to be a key driver there, especially due to demand in its growing cosmetics and personal care market.
And finally, Africa. What's the picture there?
Africa holds the smallest share, around 1%, roughly $39 million in 2025, and it also has the lowest projected CEGR at 1.2%. So it's currently the slowest growing region for this particular market.
Okay, so to summarize the geography, North America is the current heavyweight, APAC is the dynamic engine driving future growth, Europe is a large, stable market, South America and the Middle East show healthy growth rates, particularly driven by specific country trends, and Africa is still in the earlier stages for this market.
That gives you a pretty comprehensive look at the global distribution and growth patterns, at least according to the report's perspective. Shall we touch on the competitive landscape?
Yeah, let's do that. How competitive is the oleate esters market? Is it crowded?
The report describes it as highly competitive. Yes, companies are actively vying for position, definitely.
What kind of strategies are the major players using to stay ahead?
Well, a few key things. They're expanding their production capacity to meet growing demand. They're investing heavily in R&D for product innovation, looking at things like higher purity grades or maybe even more sustainable synthesis methods. And they're forming strategic alliances, things like partnerships, mergers, acquisitions, often to broaden their product lines or maybe just increase their market reach geographically.
Right. Is it mostly dominated by large global companies, or is there still room for smaller players to operate?
It seems to be a mix, actually. You have the large, established global players, like the ones we'll mention, who leverage their extensive distribution networks and economies of scale. But then you also have smaller companies that might focus on very specific niche applications or perhaps serve local markets with more tailored solutions.
Okay. The report mentioned an example involving BASF, didn't it?
It did, yes.
Yeah.
BASF is cited for its strategic moves. For example, acquiring a canola seed production facility in Idaho. Now, this kind of move helps secure their raw material supply chain, which we know can be volatile, and it also strengthens their R&D capabilities closer to the source of those natural ingredients. They've also been active in product innovation. like introducing an eco-friendly perlizer product that contains glycerol oleate, which really highlights their focus on aligning with those sustainability trends we keep talking about.
Interesting. So investing both upstream in raw materials and downstream in developing eco-friendly products makes strategic sense. The report lists several top companies in this space, I imagine.
Yes, it does. Companies mentioned include names like Cargill Incorporated, BASF SE, Kuala Lumpur Kipong Berhad, which is KLK, and Croda International PLC, among several others.
Okay. And the report also notes that it delves into other analytical areas beyond just the market size and growth numbers.
It does, yeah. It apparently examines the impact of what it specifically calls Trump's tariff war on the market, and it includes standard industry analyses like pestle analysis, Porter's five forces, and also ESG environmental, social, and governance considerations. These sections would obviously provide even deeper context on the market environment and future outlook, although the specific findings of those analyses aren't detailed in the summary text we're working from here.
Got it. So the full report covers all the strategic basis.
Yeah.
Okay, finally, let's just recap the main points that the author of the report, Manoj Fagar, highlights in his conclusion. What were his key takeaways?
Well, his summary pretty much reinforces the key takeaways we've already discussed throughout our conversation. He projects that the global market will expand significantly, hitting that 4.90% CAGR. He anticipates methyl oleate will continue its dominance among the product types, mainly due to its versatility. And he confirms that the cosmetics category remains the application with the largest market share overall.
Right. So to wrap up this deep dive then, we've pulled back the curtain on oleate esters. We understand now their compounds often derive from natural oils, playing these crucial, often unseen roles in everything from making your moisturizer feel amazing to helping pesticides protect crops and even improving how drugs are delivered in our bodies. We've seen it's a significant market already valued around $1.8 billion, and it's growing steadily towards maybe $2.6 billion by 2033. We explored the key drivers, that big push for natural and sustainable ingredients, strong demand in cosmetics, pharmaceuticals, and agrochemicals. And we also looked at the main challenge posed by those volatile raw material prices. We looked at the global stage, with North America leading now, but Asia-Pacific showing the fastest growth, and touched on how companies are competing through innovation and strategic moves like acquisitions.
It really is fascinating, isn't it? How these seemingly simple compounds are so fundamental to such diverse and important industries, from everyday products to critical sectors like health and food.
Absolutely. And considering that accelerating demand for natural, sustainable products right across the board and the critical roles these specific compounds are playing in advancing everything from healthcare to food production, it raises a powerful question for the future, doesn't it? How might future innovations in how we source or produce oleate esters, or perhaps discovering completely new ways to use them, continue to fundamentally reshape not just these specific industries, but maybe even our collective pursuit of better health, more sustainable food systems, and, well, a cleaner environment overall? It's a market that really seems to connect to some of the biggest challenges and opportunities we face today.